Hello, Year 7. This is Mr. Palmer. I'm here for your first distance learning English video lesson. As you can see, this is your term 5, start of term 5 scheme of learning, and our first lesson, as always, will be a vocabulary lesson. And you're to be doing this lesson the week beginning Monday, the 27th of April. So, our scheme of learning for this term is creative writing and experiencing other cultures. As you know, we've been looking at other cultures throughout the year. So when we did our letters to save the children, we looked at various different people from around the world and the experiences they've been having. We then read Trash, where we looked at how young children living on dump sites live. And we started to read some poems talking about different experiences within Britain of people from different cultures. And this term we're going to be going back to writing, but more creative writing, more descriptive writing, and again thinking about what things are like around the world. Our big question then for this term is, how do writers present various places around the world? And by writers, we really mean us, because we're going to be the ones doing the writing. So how do we present places? And the learning path skills we're going to be looking at for this term are skill 8, which is vocabulary. And with vocabulary, we represent that with a pick and mix bucket, because it's a different mix of words that we use to make our writing engaging. Skill 7, we're going to be looking at skill 9, sorry, we're going to be looking at language features, which is represented here by big fireworks. They're the things that put the dazzle into your writing. And skill 10, we're going to be looking at sentences and punctuation and how you control sentences using punctuation. Just quickly then, here are your learning paths. Learning path 4, 3, 2, and 1. And you may want to pause for a second and just have a look at the descriptors for your skills and have a think about what you need to achieve this term in order to do those. So I'm just going to let you pause. Just pause the video and have a look at those. Right then, I'm going to move on now. So having looked at that, again, we've got our big question, how do writers present places around the world? We've got creative writing. And just so that we're absolutely clear, today we're going to be looking at skill 8, which is vocabulary. So I'm going to be teaching you 10 words that may be new to a lot of you. Some of them you might have heard before. Some of you might know all of them, but we'll see how that goes. And I'll be teaching you what those words mean, and we're going to start applying them in sentences. I've changed the format of these lessons a bit this term. So just so you're absolutely aware, each word will be displayed in all of the available NAVA classes. If you remember, NAVA means noun, adjective, verb, and adverb. And we're doing that because we often get questions from people saying, well, can I use this word as an adjective, because I know that there's an adjective form of it. And we thought actually it's best for you to have all of those at your disposal. And the definition will be for the noun, or whichever one of those is highest up that NAVA order. So if there is no noun, but there's an adjective, we'd use the adjective. If there's no noun or adjective, but there's a verb, we'd use the verb. And if there's nothing but an adverb, we'd be using the adverb. But you'll find that quite a lot of them can be used across different word classes just by changing a bit of the word. Quick reminder for you, I'm sure you know this already and it's on your knowledge organisers, but your word classes are listed here. So we have a noun, which is a word that names a thing, an idea, a person, or a place. If you have a look at the examples we've got here, tree, pen, happiness, lost boy, Sarah, London, France. Some of these are things that you actually are physical, for example, a tree or a pen or a boy, or Sarah or London or France. However, happiness and loss are ideas, they're concepts. You'll notice also that Sarah and London and France have got capital letters at the start because they're proper nouns. They name a specific person or place, and we always put a capital letter at the start of those. So an adjective is a word that describes a noun. For example, big, a big tree, a loud pen, a hollow happiness. Not sure what blue loss is. I suppose you could have a blue boy and beautiful Sarah, strange London. So an adjective always has to have a noun that it's describing. We have verbs, words that tell us either an action or a state of being. So walk, run, breathe, or sing. So they're the actions. When you know people who say verbs are doing words, that's what that relates to. But they're also about being. So has or is or are, I am. The am in I am would be a verb. And then an adverb is something that tells us more about a verb or more about an adjective. So we could have suddenly, quickly, happily, frighteningly, cautiously, and very. So just a reminder there of what the word classes are. So as we go through this, and I'll remind you as we go along, for each word, they're going to be going over 2 slides. I want you to do 2 things. So on slide 1, I want you to write down all of the word classes, and I want you to be careful to check each spelling and make sure you're writing them correctly. When I say the words, I'm going to pause a bit afterwards. I'd like you to say those aloud so that you can practice speaking them aloud. And I want you to write that definition down, maybe using your own words if you can, because it can help to write things in your own words. So that's all you're going to do on slide 1. And again, I'll give you a little pause at the end of each slide to do that. Slide 2, you're going to be writing your own example sentences using the word to answer a prompt question. I'm also going to put a challenge on each of those to use the other forms of the word, and I'll give you a sentence I've written as well so that you can see it being used in context. So that's how this lesson's going to work. But first, a quick spelling test. Obviously, this is going to be something that you're going to do, and then you can mark how you did. So there are 10 words. I'm going to say each word twice, and I'll pause a bit to let you write it down. And then at the end, if you want to rewind or if you want to pause the video, obviously you can do that. And then we'll go through the spellings of them in the next slide. So the first word is hue. The first word is hue. The second word is kaleidoscope. The second word is kaleidoscope. The third word is fragrance. Fragrance. The fourth word is aroma. Aroma. The fifth word is copiousness. Copiousness. The sixth word is profusion. That's profusion. Seventh word is elation. Elation. The eighth word is stimulus. That's stimulus. The ninth word is cacophony. Cacophony. And the final word is reverberation. That's reverberation. So I'm just going to let you pause the video there if you want and then carry on. Okay, so let's have a look at those spellings. So here's the 10 words. So we have hue there, kaleidoscope, fragrance, aroma, copiousness, profusion, elation, stimulus, cacophony, and reverberation. And one thing you'll find is that all of these words are things that will help you with your descriptive writing. So next week, once we start writing, you'll find that these are words that you'll be able to use in your writing in their various forms. Okay, so let's move on to the individual words. As I said before, each one's going to be on 2 slides. The first slide is going to give you the word and the various different word classes, and the second slide is going to give you an opportunity to use that word in a sentence. So our first word then is hue. And when I'm saying them this time around, I'd like you to repeat the word back after you hear me saying it. So hue. And the adjective form of hue there is hued. And as you can see, it doesn't have other forms. It doesn't have a verb or an adverb. So you can have hue being a noun or hued being an adjective. And the definition is a colour or a shade of a colour. So hue's a word that you could use instead of colour, basically. And hued is a word that you could use instead of coloured. So very useful in descriptive writing. I've got you a guide down here on how to say it. Hue. And how to spell it. There's only 3 letters, so that's one of the ones that I can't break down very much. So that's the first word. If you need to pause to finish writing this down, please do, and I'll pause for a couple of seconds, then I'll move on. Okay, so we're still with that word hue, and I've written an example sentence here showing how it can be used. So I've written, I was impressed by the lovely hue of my new sweater because it reminded me of autumn leaves. Okay, so instead of saying the colour of my new sweater, I've said hue, and that sort of suggests that there's various different shades of colour within my sweater, something like autumn leaves might look like. Okay, so my question for you is, where have you encountered a hue that you liked and remembered? Now, if you're struggling, you can use this sentence starter here, a hue that I remember was. Or you could try and write a sentence like that with the word hue in it. The most important thing is that it has that word in there and you've used it to describe a colour. And there's a challenge there as well. You might need to write a couple of sentences for this one. Challenge is, can you use the adjective form of it, hued, in your answer? So can you use it to describe something? Again, I'll wait, and you can pause the video if you want, and then we'll move on. Right then, our next word is kaleidoscope. So I'll let you repeat that a few times. Kaleidoscope. 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 And we have 2 different forms of that, which is an adjective, which is kaleidoscopic, and an adverb, which is kaleidoscopically. And our definition is a kaleidoscope is a changing scene with a mixture of different things. So if you're watching something and there's lots of different things going on and it changes all the time, that would be a kaleidoscope. Or it could be kaleidoscopic. Or you could say that the scene was appearing kaleidoscopically to you. So there are various different ways you can use this word. Again, if you need to pause, you can. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So kaleidoscope again, and here's my sentence. The tropical birds flying through the sky produced a delightful kaleidoscope of colours. Now I've used that one because I think when those birds fly around, even if you haven't seen tropical birds doing it, you might well have seen starlings doing it, and they all fly in and out of each other. So that's obviously a scene that changes a lot, and the colours would bring in a lovely kaleidoscope there. Okay, so I'm challenging you now to have a think about what other scenes could produce a kaleidoscope. Again, if you want to use this sentence starter, that's fine. And if you want to try and write your own sentence, you can. And there's a challenge down here, trying to use the adjective form kaleidoscopic or the adverb kaleidoscopically in your answer. Again, you can pause. Okay, so here is our third word, and you'll see this one actually has 4 different forms, so it works in all forms. But the noun form is fragrance. Say it back. Fragrance. Fragrance. Our adjective is fragrant. Fragrant. Our verb, to fragrance. or our adverb fragrantly. And it means a nice or a sweet smell. So it's quite a simple word. Again, instead of using smell in your writing, you might want to say fragrance instead. It's a more sophisticated word to use than smell. So fragrance. I'll let you pause there and write that all down. And then if we move on to the next slide, we'll see where I've used it in a sentence. So fragrance here. She fell in love with the fragrance of the fields of lavender. Okay, so the idea there is using fragrance to be something that people would have an emotional attachment to, something that would make them feel a certain way, which normally nice smells do. Okay, so quite a simple question. What fragrance is your favorite? So you could literally write my fragrance is, might be a type of food, a type of perfume. You might like certain flowers or the smell of cut grass. Whatever you think your favorite fragrance is, you can write that down. Again, the sentence starter or your own sentence is fine, so long as you're using that word in your answer, fragrance. And as a challenge, how many of the other forms could you use? The adjective fragrant, the verb to fragrance, and the adverb fragrantly. Could you use any of those in your answer? I'll let you pause now. Okay, year 7, we'll move on to the next one. So our next word is aroma. So I suggest you say it back to me. Aroma. Aroma. Or we have the adjective aromatic or the adverb aromatically. And an aroma is a noticeable smell often associated with food. So you've got two different words to describe smells, those last two words, but this one's more associated with food than the previous one was. So an aroma is a smell we associate with food. Let you pause to write that down. And then we'll move on to the next slide. In this slide, I've used that word in a sentence. As soon as he noticed the aroma of the tandoori oven, his mouth started to water. Okay, so we've got that idea of an aroma being a smell that we associate with food, and if it reminds us of food we particularly like, that might be something quite tempting to us. So your question to answer is, which food produces the best aroma? And you can answer that question here. You could use that sentence starter. You could write your own sentence if you want. You might want to explain why you think that's the best aroma. And as a challenge down here, is try and use that adjective aromatic. So that would describe a noun. So you might describe an aromatic type of food, or an adverb aromatically. So you might have to say how the food entered the room or something like that. So I'll pause and let you do that one. So our next word is copiousness. It's quite a long one, this one. Copiousness. That's the noun form. Try again. Copiousness. Copiousness. We then have the adjective, which is copious, and the adverb, which is copiously. And copiousness is the state of having more than enough of something. So it means that there's plenty of stuff to go around. Just pause and let you write that down. And then we'll move on to using it in our own sentences. So the best thing about the buffet was the copiousness of dishes on offer. So when I've written that the suggestion there is there's so many dishes you couldn't possibly have even a little bit of each one. It would fill you up too quickly. So copiousness is just far too much than anyone would ever reasonably want. So I want you to have a think about, it doesn't have to relate to food at all. In what situation have you been impressed by the copiousness of something? So your sentence starter here, I was impressed by the copiousness of something when. Okay, and you might want to think about things like you might have seen tall buildings once when you were somewhere, or lots of cars, or lots of people in one place at one time, or anything like that. It doesn't. There's no limit to what you could have been impressed by having a large number of. Your challenge is to use the adjective copious or the adverb copiously in your answer, and I'll let you pause and do that. And our next word then is profusion. A profusion. Profusion. A profusion is a large amount of something. You might use the adjective profuse or the adverb profusely. Again, all to indicate that the thing that you're talking about is a large amount. So that's two words in a row that you can use to describe lots of things instead of saying lots or loads or something like that. Some quite long, sophisticated words you could use to describe having a lot of something. I'll let you pause and write that down. And then if we move on, we can see where I've used that word in a sentence. So there was a profusion of boxes blocking the motorway after the lorry's doors flew open. So the idea then is there's so many boxes blocking that motorway, no one could ever possibly begin to count them. It'd be a waste of time. It just looks like there's so many boxes you couldn't tell how many that was. So it's not always negative profusion, but I've asked you a question: what sort of profusion can you imagine making your day more difficult? Certainly, if you were driving somewhere or riding in a car, and boxes were blocking the motorway, that would make your day pretty bad. So I wanted to try and think about a different type of profusion that would ruin your day. Okay, so you could use this sentence starter here. I think my day would be made difficult by a profusion of, or again, you could try and write it in a more sort of storytelling way. Your challenge, as always, to use the adjective profuse or the adverb profusely in your answer. I'll let you pause and have a go at that. So our next word is elation. Elation is the state of being very happy and excited. Elation. Elation. And you may find that as well as feeling elation, you could be elated, or you could elate, or you could act elatedly. So your adjective elated, your verb to elate, or your adverb elatedly. The state of being very happy and excited. I'll let you pause to write that down. And if we move on, we can see where I've used it in a sentence. There was a great feeling of elation when the new theme park opened for the first time. That's a lot of people there, all feeling very, very excited about going to a theme park and going on the roller coasters and the water flumes and eating candy floss and that kind of thing. They're also excited about it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you about it. When have you felt elation? Again, you can use that sentence starter then, I felt elation, or you can try and write a slightly longer sentence to include it. And as a challenge, could you use the adjective elated, the verb to elate, or the adverb elatedly in your answer? So have a go at that. And then we'll move on to word number 8. And word number 8 is stimulus. Stimulus. A stimulus is something that causes a strong positive reaction. Positive meaning good. So stimulus. Stimulus. If we say it down here, stimulus. Your adjective is stimulating. Your verb is to stimulate. And your adverb is stimulatingly. So again, two words quite similar here. These ones to sort of talk about positive feelings or excitement. And I'll let you pause to write those down. And then we'll move on to my example sentence. So here I've written the stimulus of fresh orange juice was just the right thing before my morning workout. So the idea being there that fresh orange juice really got me going before I went out on the treadmill or whatever. And when you think about what stimulates you for activity, so what acts as a stimulus for activity for you? So I find a great stimulus for activity is, it doesn't have to be a thing, a drink or a food. It could be um, the people you see when you do that activity, or the things it makes you think or feel. And as a challenge, I already used it then. You could use the adjective stimulating, the verb to stimulate, or the adverb stimulatingly in your answer. And then we're ready to move on. We've got 2 words left of this year 7. So word number 9, one of my favourite words, is cacophony, which is a mixture of loud and disorganized sounds. So there it is there, cacophony. We could do it a bit slower. Cacophony. 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 We also have an adjective form there, which is cacophonous, or an adverb, which is cacophonously. And it's really a great word for describing when there's so much sound going around. It's loud, it's disorganized, you can't work out what's going on, you don't know what sounds which. It's a nice way to describe that feeling. So when, in fact, I'll pause, let you write it down. And then we'll move on to having a look at where I've used it in a sentence. So my sentence, the street was alive with a cacophony of car horns, engines, speakers, and voices. So in that sentence, cacophony instead of something like sound, uh, or I could hear, cacophony helps to really sort of bring alive that scene. So the car horns, you can imagine they're honking all over the place. The engines, all sorts of different volumes and noises there. Speakers playing all different music and voices, maybe some shouting, people speaking in different languages. The idea that being there's so much going on, you can't really make anything out. So I need to have a think about what other situations might produce a cacophony of sound. So a cacophony can be produced by, you could use that as a sentence starter. You can try and write your own sentence. And as a challenge, have a think about using the adjective cacophonous or the adverb cacophonously in your answer. Trying to use that word in all the different forms to practice it. I'll pause there and let you do that. We move on to our final word, which is reverberation. A reverberation is a sound that echoes. So it's another word to describe sound, much like the last one. So we have reverberation, reverberation, and reverberation. And then our adjective form is reverberant. Our verb, to reverberate. And our adverb, reverberantly. Pause to let you write that down. Then we'll move on to the final example. So reverberation. And I couldn't help myself but refer to school in this last one. So the number of children in the large hall caused a reverberation of excited chatter. So the hall at school is a really good example of that because it's so big and tall that the sound echoes everywhere. So when there's lots of you in there, it really makes a loud echoey noise. So reverberation of excited chatter. So you can think of other places where sound might become a reverberation. So you can use that sentence starter there. Sound might become a reverberation when, or you could try and write your own sentence. And as a challenge, if you wanted to try and use the adjective reverberant, the verb to reverberate, or the adverb reverberation in your answer. I'll pause to let you do that and we'll have a look at the words one more time after that. And then if we just have a look at them all together. So here's our 10 words for the term, words I'm going to be asking you to try and use in your writing when you do your descriptive writing in the coming weeks. So we have hue and kaleidoscope, both of which sort of describe appearances or colours. We have fragrance and aroma, both of which can be used to describe smells. Copiousness and profusion, and they're both about sort of describing a large number of something, having lots of things. Elation and stimulus, both about good feelings, happiness, excitement. and then those two words about sounds at the end, cacophony and reverberation. So that's all your words for this term. I will put this PowerPoint on to show my homework and a copy of the knowledge organizer. There will be a quiz coming out where it will be a vocabulary test as you're used to doing. So start studying those words and practicing spelling them and writing them down. And stay safe. And next week we'll start writing our descriptions. Thank you very much.